Another Tuesday is upon us here in the city of Lagos. It is the 17th of September, 2024. I'm hoping you are having a fantastic return to work this beautiful Tuesday morning. I certainly am. Sure as heck. And we're about to get into the conversation for today. I am David Chiedu, and today we're talking about issues, of course, just as we will do normally on Market Insights, issues that border on the market and how it fares and how, by extension, it affects you and I. And of course, also overarchingly shaping ideas, recommendations, and the whatabouts with regards to policies regarding agriculture, policies regarding the markets, policies regarding the numbers, policies regarding sundry commodities that come together to form our economy, as you were. Today on the program, we're talking about post-harvest losses that occur in the agric sector and how to therein deal with these issues. Now, Nigeria loses an average of 526 million tons of food annually, while 30% of food production is lost every year due to lack of cold chains, according to sector experts. In fact, 45% of all fruit and vegetables, 35% of all fish and seafood, as well as 30% of cereals are lost at the post-harvest level due to a lack of proper storage facilities. Now, Nigeria is one of the largest producers of food in Africa, but it also has one of the highest rates of food wastage in the world. Yes, I dare say it, in the world. Now, recent findings by Business Day newspaper has it that the country's annual post-harvest loss is sitting somewhere between 3.5 to 3.7 trillion naira, and it has surpassed its combined 5-year federal budget for agriculture. Very, very shocking, that one. Now, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO that is, Nigeria wastes about 1/3 of its food production yearly, which is enough to feed over 40 million people. Now, some stakeholders even suggest that the country can cut down its post-harvest losses with the adoption of a method, or if you like, a process called effective cold chain. Now, we'll examine this particular recommendation as well as the causes and extent of post-harvest losses in the country, as well as what needs to be done across the board when you're talking about subnational and national levels as well to reduce these losses when they do occur. We're being joined this morning by our guest. He is an agriculture and agribusiness strategy expert, beg your pardon, in the person of Mr. Godfrey Meyer Petgrave. And Mr. Meyer Petgrave, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much, David.
Welcome again. So we would get into, some of these recommendations that have been given by experts very shortly, having you give us your thoughts and walking us through them. But first things first, on a fundamental level, let's get an understanding of some of these losses that happen across the board, why they happen, and in the different ways or different forms and shapes that they occur. Let's start with that.
Okay, thank you so much, David. First, we need to appreciate what exactly is this post-harvest losses. Then we can understand appreciate why they happen. So from the farm level, post-harvest losses is anything that reduces the quantity and the quality of your products from the point of the field to where it reaches the consumers. So how do this happen? Since we understand that post-harvest losses is the reduction in either the quantity or the quality, how does it happen and why does it happen? We know that over 70% of food produced are still by smallholder farmers, and at their level, there are key factors that are responsible for the post-harvest losses. And one striking one will be their inadequate storage facilities. Over 30% of agricultural produce on the field go to waste because of poor storage facilities at their farm level. So when the farmers have produced their crops or their dairy products, the inability to properly store them effectively for a long period of time before it gets to the end users, produce get lost at that time. Then we are also battled with the poor transportation facilities. Good for transportation facilities and also access to good roads. So most of the farming activities happen in the rural areas where we usually do not have good roads. So even if these farmers are successful at producing their product or agricultural produce, they find it difficult to get it to the market where it's going to have good values. We also have insufficient processing facilities. And for this, I know the federal government has done a lot with the SAPZ project. It's a project that, though it's not in full blown yet, the federal government is trying to see how working with partners like the ADP and the IFAD, they can have special processing zones at close to the farming areas where produce can be processed into storable products.
Apologies for that little glitch in transmission. Yes, we're still talking about post-harvest losses in our agric sector and how to reduce these losses, or perhaps maybe totally eradicate them, as you were, from the value chain. And we're still being joined by Mr. Godfrey Meyer Petgrave. He's an agriculture and agribusiness strategy expert. Godfrey, are you still there?
Hi, David. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Right on. Let's keep it moving, if you will, please. Earlier, you were telling us, you were giving us some of your thoughts and shedding some light on why these things happen and in the different forms that they occur. If you could kindly, go on with that thought process.
Oh yeah, thanks, David. So I would say there are key factors that you could look at, perspectives, and one of them, as I said earlier, was inadequate storage facilities. So at the farm level, a smallholder farmer gets his produce. He needs some storage facilities to keep them before, at least keep them wholesome from the time of harvest till the time it gets to maybe the middleman and until it gets to the kitchen or the table, wherever you call it. Now, smallholder farmers don't have access to those kind of facilities, or even though they are inadequate for them to keep their produce until it gets to the final consumer. They still rely on traditional storage methods. These traditional storage methods are prone to pests, are prone to spoilage. But if they had, in the Western world, they have what they call hermetic storage and all that, where airtight facilities that do not allow the presence of the invasion of insects or moisture. We need to look at things from that perspective. And also poor transportation infrastructure. We have the problem of poor transportation infrastructure, and we also have the problem of access roads. So the farming operation happens in the rural areas. In these areas, we really don't have good roads that can carry the produce from the farmer's farm to the markets. For example, I had carried out a survey, I had led a survey in Benue State, and I looked at smallholder farmers and that grow specifically rice and all that. The one major problem they had, in fact, I experienced the problem too, because getting to reach the farmers was tumultuous. There were little or no road network to get to the farmers. So you can imagine farmers having grown their produce for the year and the planting season, they are unable to carry the produce to the market because there are no roads. These are the things that contribute to the the increased post-harvest losses. We also have the problem of availability of processing facilities. If a produce is gotten from the farm, in order to add economic and aesthetic value to those produce, you need to process it into a final product. So if we have those processing facilities closer to the farm, then the farmers can turn their produce into products that will fetch them more money. The federal government, the Nigerian government is doing a lot with that. I know of this SAPZ, Special Agro Processing Zone projects that the government is supporting. I think they're supporting collaboration with the African Development Bank and International Fund for Agriculture. Now, this is a program that allows the special processing zone to be closer to the farmers so that right from the farm, the farmers can have their produce processed into some products that can attract more value. So these are initiatives that we need to also help reduce the post-harvest losses. So we need more of that kind of initiative. And finally, I'll look at the lack of cold storage infrastructure. Perishable goods, for instance, they need to be transported using cold storage vehicles and all that, and also kept in a cold storage facility. If we look at tomato sector, even though in 2021, Nigeria boasted of the highest producers of tomatoes, they also could not do much with that statistics because 50% of the produce were lost to post-harvest losses. How did this happen? Because tomato is a perishable product and farmers do not handle them properly. The post-harvest handling is poor, and also the transportation to the farm is poor, and they don't also have processing facilities to put it in a form that can reach the market wholesomely. Then they get to lose most of their produce to both pest and human handling. The way they package the tomato, for instance, is substandard. In other climes, you package your tomatoes using proper crates and all, but here we still have smallholder farmers packing tomatoes in baskets. And when you pack them in baskets in the process of it to the market or the final consumer, they press each other and their aesthetics is lost. They lose moisture, they get broken. And then when they break, it's easy access for germs and other pathogenic organisms that can make those tomatoes to go bad. So these are the issues that they face. And in order to mitigate these issues, yes, it's not everything the government has to do. We also have the
Godfrey, can you hear me? Now, you've spoken
Yes, I
a
can
lot
hear
about
you.
a few things. I want to pick out something perhaps that may or may not contribute to harvesting issues or harvest losses, as the case may be. I reckoned in some quarters, some stakeholders have also mentioned things like flooding. I don't know if you agree that that is part of the contingent matters, responsible, or factors rather, responsible. In this part of the world, we have, that issue, for all intents and purposes. As a matter of fact, the Northeast right now, as we speak, is dealing with huge flooding issues, cutting all the way to the middle belt. Which, if we're going to put things in perspective, we realize that those are major players as far as food production is concerned. And then in some other quarters as well, you have drought issues. So there's the fear that food production from those areas and processes like harvesting and whatnot could be on the line. What do you reckon?
the flood crisis in the northern region, especially in Maiduguri. We need to be careful how we relate this to post-harvest losses anyway, my opinion. But for the farm, at the farm level, we have a cropping cycle. The cropping cycle starts from when you bury your seed into the soil and when you get fruits that you can harvest. And now, how has the flood affected or contributed to post-harvest losses? Most farmers could have been harvesting their produce that they have farmed at the beginning of the planting season, and the flood has now destroyed most of the crops at harvest time. So because post-harvest losses happens at the time of harvest to the time it gets to the final consumer. So we can link the recent flood crisis to have contributed to post-harvest losses at the farm level, because farmers that have planted at the beginning can no longer go into the farm to harvest. Even those who have harvested and stored their produce, the flood has already ravaged their storage houses. So you see, these are all contributing factors. And you cannot transport your produce when the roads are flooded, because I see on the news how the flood had destroyed some mini bridges and all that. The roads are broken. You can no longer access the market where your produce should be sold. Drought is another issue that is critical in the northern region, and it is creeping in. You know, it has, because of global warming, planting cycles have changed. So when you should expect the rains, you don't expect the rains. You cannot plant without the rains. In Africa generally, we deal on rain-fed. We rely so much on rain-fed agriculture. Unlike countries like Israel that have done fantastic work in irrigation farming and all that. We're not there yet, but we can get there. So that is how drought can also affect or contribute to increased post-harvest losses. So it means that if you cannot plant when you're supposed to plant, and you have reduced amount of rainfall, your yield is impacted. So if you expect to have 4 metric tons of rice, for instance, at the end of the cropping season, we know that rice, the crop relies so much on water for proper vegetative growth and seed production. When you don't have the rains coming as much as it should come, then it's going to affect your yield at the end of the planting season, and you cannot get as much rice grains as you should have had, and it impacts on the amount of money you get at the end of the cycle. So these are the issues that we need to deal with. I don't know if you're still on,
earlier,
David.
you mentioned some of the challenges in hinterlands, rural areas where they have issues with mobility and whatnot. We're going to get to that very shortly, but let me take you back to some of the recommendations by experts such as yourself, to mitigate these issues we have with post-harvest losses. They have suggested, or they have recommended, that we employ the use, or we adopt, if you like, the use of effective cold chain processes, as you were. Now, can you give us a sense of what this is? Just walk us through the processes, because I reckon it takes some expertise, if you like, and not just any old smallholder farmer can, take on it as he were. So can you, walk us through the processes generally?
Effective cold chain storage system, transportation system, I beg your pardon. It goes beyond just smallholder farmer operation, because you need the technical expertise and the skills to operate the vehicles, to operate the cold storage facilities and all that. But I would like to look at it from a holistic point of view. Right from the smallholder farmer level to the storage house, where we have the cold chain facilities. Now, why I say this is because you cannot have a cold chain operation if you don't have what to store or what to transport. Do you understand? So let us take tomatoes, for instance. Tomatoes is a perishable food like other vegetables. If we don't have tomatoes harvested at the end of the planting season, we wouldn't even need a cold chain storage. So that's why we need to appreciate encouraging farmers to adopt proper post-harvest handling of tomatoes. So they need to stop packing their tomatoes in baskets, for instance. There are more efficient ways, effective ways of packaging their tomatoes. And when they package it in their crates, they now move it to the cold vehicles that now take it to the cold storage facilities. So we don't just look at cold storage facilities because the smallholder farmer is unable to even afford that kind of technology. So there has to be some kind of public-private partnership with investment into that sector. So we encourage the cold chain operators to come into the system and interface with the smallholder farmers. There has to be that connection and that relationship. And what brings the connection is the produce that should be stored and that should be transported. So it has to be connected. That's the whole value chain has to be in sync for us to even speak about cold chain storage in the first place, David.
All right. Now, I'm still going to stick to this particular, train of thought, as it were. Still talking about the smallholder farmers. Now, in those hinterlands that you and I know, there's hardly electricity in some areas. Not all, by the way, but some areas, they still struggle with electricity. So, first of all, you start to wonder how these high-end processes or facilities are going to work. That's one. And then two, you talked about these people packing or storing the stuff in baskets. So I'm thinking, surely there are alternative means of storing them. So practically speaking, what other cheaper, accessible and practicable means of storing their produce, or what other means are there rather for them to store their produce besides the one which you have vehemently knocked, which are baskets and the likes?
Baskets are made from raffias and all that. And the crates I talk about now are not necessarily the plastic crates that need high technologies to create. We have wooden crates too. We're just telling them you need to adopt the use of proper crates so that when you stack them on each other in the vehicle that transports it, it doesn't press against itself. The fruits don't press against itself. That's the essence of the crates. So when we do that, then we have solved one problem. We have reduced the post-harvest loss significantly. Then we look at the effective cold chain operation. The effective cold chain operation involves the use of that cold storage vehicles and also taking it to cold storage facilities. How can we achieve this? Farmer aggregation, for instance. If we get private sector players into this that have the money to invest in this, then we aggregate farmers, they get their produce, they collect it at the center, they have collection centers, and with proper handling of the produce, then the private sector players of the cold chain operators can have sufficient produce to store. Now we speak of electricity, the issue of electricity. This is a problem in Nigeria generally. So how can we attend to that problem? It is not something that we strike a wand and the problem disappears. No, it will be impractical to think like that. But that's why we need private sector investment into the agri sector when we speak of storage. Where we can't rely on the government for electricity, yeah, but we can rely on investment for cold chain facilities, for storage facilities that will use a blend of maybe generator sets to power to give them electricity supply, or solar. Now, most of the food we have comes from the north. The north boasts of long hours of sunshine. We can harness all these natural gifts from natural gifts to our benefit. So we need to now start looking beyond hydroelectricity and all that and move into solar. And if we have mini grids in those farming areas, this is where the government will come in also, not to solve the problem or to invest, but to create an enabling environment for the private sector engagements. How do they do that? We have issues of banditry and all that. These are insecurity issues that affect even operation from the primary farming level. Then speaking of the investment of the private sector. So that is where the government will come in. The government doesn't necessarily have to invest in it, but they have to make the environment good. Because when I was in Benue State, for instance, most farmers can't go into the farm because of the farmer header crisis. So if the government comes in and solves that problem, then the farmers can go into the farm and they can get their produce to the cold chain operators. And then we've solved the problem of post-harvest losses significantly, David. Significant. I can't hear you, David. Hi, David. I can't hear you.
In Naira to establish about 33 silos, silo complexes, that is, about 25 grain aggregation centers, and about nine different units of Blomberg warehouses, some of which have been, concessioned already. And now that project, which is at varying degrees of completion or deliverables, aims to, keep about 5% of the national output in storage. Many stakeholders have said this is merely a scratch on the surface, as he were. What do you make of this, Godfrey?
Hi, David.
Go on.
I lost you a bit of your comments.
Quite get
you are
everything,
inaudible.
did you?
No. You are inaudible.
Hello,
totally.
Godfrey, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Now, all right. I was talking about some of what the government at the national level specifically has done in recent years. I mentioned that there's been an investment of over 60 billion naira to establish about 33 silo complexes, about 25 grain aggregation centers, and 9 units of warehouses, some of which have been concessioned. And then, of course, these projects are across the board of different, or varying degrees, as you were, of completion and or deliverables. Now, all of it put together aims to keep about 5% of national outputs in storage. Now, some stakeholders and experts, such as yourself, have said that all of these put together are merely, just scratching the surface and, cannot really do much for the problems that we have with regards to post-harvest losses. What are your thoughts? What do you make of this?
Okay, David. Yeah. So we need to look beyond relying on the government to solve the agricultural problem. That will be a feat that we might never achieve. And this is why I say so. If we do not encourage the private sector investments, we might never achieve the heights that we might be looking at. The government can only do as much as the budget and available funds allows it to do. And 5% is a significant number, but we can do more. The way we can do more is to encourage private sector engagement and look at it as a business. We should stop looking at agriculture and its activities from the smallholder farmer perspective. It can't work that way. So there are organizations, there are companies that are ready to come in, build massive warehouse structures that are privately run. It doesn't need to be run by the government, and warehousing operations that these things have worked in other countries. I was in Kenya sometime last year, and I saw how they do the warehouse receipt operation. It's privately run. It's only regulated by the government. The government regulates how the government gives policies that encourage the operation of these activities. And that is how we should start looking at agriculture in Nigeria as a business, not as a handout. When for instance, when we look at improving the agri sector, we want the government to come and give us handouts, give fertilizers, give inputs and all that. We can't work that way. We can't thrive that way. We need to look at it as a business. The smallholder farmer should be empowered to understand that agriculture is a business, that agriculture needs to put in your time and effort and skill, and then you get your result. So going back to our point, the government has invested 60 billion naira in production and storage facilities and all that. This is a tremendous effort by the government. It's a tremendous effort. The step further is to encourage other private sector engagers, operators to come in. And it's going to be like you are collaborating with both the government and the farmers to get bigger storage facilities. You understand, at that level. So then it's a gradual process. It keeps increasing. Now we have 5% storage. Then we can have 10 when you get more private sector into it, and then 20 and all that. Israel, for instance, has about less than 10% of their produce going to post-harvest losses. That's because they've put in substantial investment in it. And it's a private sector investment, not the government. So let us stop looking at the government to solve all our problems.
You're still watching Market Insights this morning here on Souk News Television, and we have been talking about tackling post-harvest losses in our agric sector across the value chain. In case you're just joining us, you've missed quite a lot, but hey, and there's still a couple more left in the arsenal to bring out. Now, Godfrey, let's, oh, by the way, our guest has been Godfrey Meyer Petgrave. He is an agric expert and has been giving us his thoughts so far. Let's also, take you back just a little bit. A couple of minutes ago when you talked about access to the market, transportation, or if you like, mobility issues, one of which is occasioned by the dreadful, abysmal roads that we have in, across the country, basically. Now, besides that, there's also, the issue of receiving low prices from sales of their produce by certain middlemen, which for all intents and purposes have been mentioned one too many times whenever it comes to movement of goods from production points to the final consumer, as you were. How do we deal with this particular issue? Very quickly, Godfrey.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this up, because it's a serious problem. We need to eliminate as much as possible the middlemen from the value chain if we want the primary producers to get the maximum benefit from their effort on the field. This is why I say so. But in order for that to happen, first of all, the farming community needs to be properly organized among themselves. We need to bring in encourage more cooperative participation and all that. Because when their produce are aggregated, then they can actually have more benefits for their produce. But when the middlemen come in, the middlemen do the aggregation themselves, get the produce to the final market, and have much more benefit from the sales than the farmers. They leave the farmers with next to nothing. So if the farming sector is more organized and we cut off the middlemen from it, because the middlemen take the risk of the transportation of this produce to the final receiver and all that. But if at the farming levels, you organize the farmers to aggregate their commodities and their produce and all that, then it can go straight to the final consumers. And I'll give you a practical example. I was speaking with a uh, a businessman who moves produce to the market. Now, they gather these things from the farmers, buy them for next to nothing, they forge them, and now sell it at an inflated rate at a later time. These things are not ethical to start with. So this is where we actually need government regulatory and policy adjustment and all that to cut these excesses of the middleman.
Interesting. Very interesting. Now, another issue as well that I would also like to point out is, some of these technologically advanced processes, as it were, would require some expertise. So, in your view, as an expert who's dealt with matters like these across the length and breadth of the country, would you say that, in your view, the practitioners in the sector have had adequate sensitization by way of perhaps trainings and whatnot to be, equipped sufficiently to handle these matters? How would you assess that generally?
Yeah, David. So generally speaking, the farmers, learning is always constant. Yeah, you don't end learning. So the farming operation that was key 5 years ago is no longer like that. Today we're talking about precision farming. We're talking about using drones and all that. We're not there yet. We're still at the level where we need to encourage mechanized farming. But in the global community, they're talking about precision farming. There are two different things. So we need to get to one level before we go to the next. You understand? So now the major problem we have with that is Nigeria still has one of the lowest agri extension agent to farmer ratio. It's one of the lowest globally. That needs to be fixed. And I'll still say it again that we still need to start looking at how we can get private sector.
Godfrey, if I may interrupt you a little bit, just for a second there, if you will. When you speak about agri extension ratio to farmer, if I'm not mistaken, can you break that down further so that we can get a much better understanding? I reckon this is supposed to be a teachable moment for everyone who's watching right now.
All right, David, thank you. Can you hear me? Am I audible? All right. So now let me break that down. In Nigeria, we know what the agri extension agents do. They are a form of, they are the agents that take information to the farmers, information about new ways of doing things, good agronomic practices, good agricultural practices. It is their job to disseminate these information, innovation, and all that to farmers. That has been established. Now, in Nigeria, we have one agri extension agent to 5,000 farmers. How is it going to do that? It's one of the lowest ratio. In other countries, you have one agri extension agent to 300 farmers. That's reasonable, not 5,000. So if we don't get more agri extension agent into the field or encourage the digital agriculture, digital penetration and all that, we cannot get information to the farmers at their level. So that is about agri extension agents. Now we have e-extension, but farmers need access to mobile phones or digital smartphones that can receive information online. So that too can solve the problem. We have to do a blend of digital agriculture and e-extension and the physical extension agents for us to at least achieve something in that field.
All right, now as we round up, very, very quickly, if you can give us your thoughts in a little over a minute, let's take a look at what obtains globally right now, talking about the best practices, as it were. What would be some of what would be some of the widely accepted recommendations and or current practices that we can draw from some agriculturally rich nations, both in Europe, or in the Americas, or even back here on the continent of Africa? Your thoughts?
Yeah, David. Yeah, good. So there are countries that are notable for advancement in agriculture, and one of them that I wouldn't fail to mention is Israel. You know, Israel has established its very efficient irrigation and storage techniques, and it has reduced their post-harvest losses to less than 10%. So Israel, with their reduced population and all that, they've not let that become a disadvantage to them. Instead, they don't have as much rainfall in the year as we have in Nigeria. So they've been able to make alternative uses of water sources and all that. In terms of irrigation, they're one of the best globally. So water management is something that even Nigeria can adopt, especially in the north where the drought is cropping in, and then storage facilities. So like we said earlier, if we can look into how we can get private sector engagement in cold storage and all that, then that problem is solved. Then if we look at India with their population, I like to mention them because Nigeria's population too is growing at a very high rate. So what has India done differently? They have used cold storage and warehouses. So with cold storage and warehousing situated closer to the farming areas, I think it's something that Nigeria now needs to look into to reduce how long it takes, reduce the handling of the produce. So the more the produce is handled, the more tendency we have of spoilage. So but with warehousing situated closer to the farming areas and good transportation means, we'll reduce the amount of time that produce is handled by how many people it's handled and all that. So that's what has happened in India, and I think it's something that Nigeria too can also adopt. So if we look inwards into Africa, South Africa has done a lot in agro-processing hub, and this is also what we can do. The SAPZ project that the federal government is supporting is a laudable one, and I think that they should continue at it and also expand it. We need to scale up that project. The SAPZ project needs to be scaled up to all the farming areas so that farmers can have processing unit and storage unit close to their farming communities. Thanks, David.
Thank you very much, Godfrey Meyer Petgrave, for joining us on the program this morning. Mr. Petgrave is an agric expert and an agribusiness strategy expert as well. He has given us his thoughts on the program with regards to ways, as it were, to tackle post-harvest losses in our agric sector. That's Market Insight this morning. With regards to some of the recommendations that were hinted during the course of our conversations, we talked about, some experts, including him, suggesting the adoption of effective cold chain processes, better packaging by smallholder farmers, ease of transportation, by the authorities, making it easier for mobility from point of production to final point of sale, creating an enabling environment also very, very important, as well as employing technologically advanced initiatives or methods to make sure that these produce are properly stored and at par with global best practices, as well as bringing in the private sector to partner with these, to partner these initiatives with the government, as it were. Now, of course, with the renewed impetus by the federal government to diversify our economy through improvement of agricultural productivity, it is important that a lot of these, if not more, need to be put in place to make sure that we, as best as we can, cut out post-harvest losses, because the implications are by far quite damaging. That's Market Insight this morning. But before we go, let's take a look at the currency market today, September 17. At the official market, the Naira is trading to the US dollars at 1,575 naira to the pound sterling, 2,111 naira to the euro, 1,783 naira. Elsewhere in the parallel market, the naira dollar trade is 1,637, and It's also trading to the pound sterling at 2,167 naira, to the euro 1,825 naira. That is what it looks like on, or rather at, the currency market. Many thanks for joining us in the program this morning. Do stay close. Many more engaging and insightful programs coming up, but do join us at the top of the hour for the news updates. I am David Chiedu. Have a good day.